All right. Hey, Freddie, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
My man, thank you so much for inviting me.
So, as we were kind of babbling on about before we got on here, you are still currently a disc jockey in where? Houston? Yeah?
In Texas, in these United States of America. Yeah.
Okay. We were talking about actually about guests, and I've done, I don't know, 700 podcasts at this point, and 300 and, well, you were production number 329 of the video show, so over 1,000. And we were talking about the different guests and how the time frame for the segment, some people it's like pulling teeth to get them to speak for 5 minutes, and other people they're just getting warmed up after 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So, what sort of guests are you interviewing when you were doing your segments?
Backing up, I have a music show, so I'm talking 6 to 8 times an hour over Justin Bieber and Billie Eilish records for 10 to 30 seconds at a time. But then on Sunday morning, the show that we are talking about, it's a 3 segment half-hour show with commercials. So the sweet spot is 8 minutes, and the window that we give our guests 6.5 to 8.5. We go over, we go under, then we end up being on time at the end of the day. Then we have fill music at the end of the hour, so all good. But I'm talking to guests from all walks of life. We're talking American Cancer Society. We got Citizens for Animal Protection. We've got mom and pop food service companies that they're making salsa and donating proceeds from their profits to save the rhinos. We got a whole mixed bag of different guests to keep things interesting on Sunday mornings as part of our community affairs outreach, which helps us maintain the license. It helps us keep the lights on here in Houston, Texas.
What do you think about terrestrial radio's future? I think it's going to die. I think AM is going to stay around because for emergency purposes only. If we have
Yeah.
a nuclear holocaust, AM radio will still work with a generator, right? You can still broadcast news and other, what is that, the emergency broadcasting system. But FM radio, at least how I remembered it, where it was album rock, where it was that kind of thing, all of that's gone online now.
It's the eternal question that we terrestrial broadcasters ask ourselves. It could be 5 years, it's the end of the world. But of course, it was the end of the industry as we knew it back in the '90s when I first got into this insane business. Then it was Sirius XM. That was going to be the nail in the coffin. And then it was the internet. Oh, the internet. Oh my goodness. We've got all these music sources. What is it? Napster
Right.
and gosh, that's going to be the end. And then it's car connectivity is going to be the end because now people can play their personalized Spotify playlists in their car. My teenage daughters like to do the same thing. I'm partial to Apple Play every now and then when I'm not listening to my own radio station for for monitoring purposes. But it seems like every year there's something that's going to knock us out. That's going to be the death knell to the industry. But we're made of Teflon, so we just have to. I think it's incumbent upon us broadcasters in the traditional terrestrial space to go where the listeners are, and we do that through community outreach shows like the one that I have on Sunday mornings, but also going out and hanging out with our listeners and finding them in the internet space, whether it is TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. No MySpace. We're not sharing pics on Friendster, but if you go out to the social media outlets and communicate and engage with the fans, and I am very confident that I could say that our radio station here in Houston, KRBE, two-time Marconi Award winning radio station. Thank you very much. But I can say that we have fans. We have loyal fans. We have a fan base. So as long as we engage with these people who engage with us, who take their time out of their day when there's so many different choices. As we are talking, so many different choices, they choose to engage with us. So we have to engage them back.
Well, it's funny you mentioned MySpace, because I was on that 20 years ago when it first came out, and it was like all the musicians, all the indie music was going there. And is that even still around?
Man, you know, I still have an account.
Do you really? Okay. I probably do too, but I haven't even tried to access it in 15
I
years.
haven't accessed that thing in years, man.
Wow. I should try, because there's probably some really funny pictures, 20-year-old pictures of me on there somewhere. But
yeah.
Well, listen, let's move on to your book, because that's why you're here. You've written a book called They Cancelled the DJ.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is not about canceling FM radio. This is something else.
No, this is a satirical dark comedy which follows the life of a soon-to-be nationally syndicated terrestrial DJ who commits the cardinal unwritten rule sin of dating a listener. You never date a listener. But he fell head over heels for a listener who then, and this is the inciting incident, so this is not a spoiler, she ditches him for a world famous musician on a very embarrassing scale, on stage in front of a bunch of people. So it follows his story for redemption and revenge, and we don't know. Well, actually, I do, because I wrote the story, but you'll never know. Does he take a chill pill or 10? Does he find his moment of Zen? Does he learn from his lessons, the mistakes that he has made throughout the book? You'll find out.
All right, well, good. And I'm glad you kept that short, because the one thing that bothers me when I have some authors on, I won't mention their names, but they go and they dissect their book chapter by chapter. And by the time you're finished with the interview, nobody wants to buy the book because they feel like they've already read it. So I'm glad you kept that short. And but I did want to ask you one thing. You had mentioned right at the beginning of your statement about the book, where you said you never date a listener. That's a cardinal rule. Well, why not? I mean, I understand not dating an employee, you know, at the radio station. That never works in any job, usually. But why a listener? Why is that one a taboo?
You know what? It's just one of those unspoken rules. You just don't do it because you never know what'll happen. And let me tell you, before I met my now wife, I was in one of those situations. I had met a listener, and she was, by all accounts, nice. And then I picked her up, and we hung out at the mall. And it was time for me to take her home. And she didn't want to get out of the pickup truck. And that was a problem, because I had to go back to the radio station for a meeting. And she refused to get out. And she was a little crazy.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, but that's, to be fair, you could meet somebody like that anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. But it's, I think at the end of the day, the listener, if we're, you know, if we're upfront with ourselves, the listener is really the end all be all, the first client of the radio station. So would you date a client? Sure, not a client which you could monetize. That's, you know, not a traditional client in that sense where they purchase an ad, but the radio station is nothing without its listeners. So they are really the frontline client. So would you date a client? I know I wouldn't.
Well, I suppose that's a good point. And I guess it depends on how big the organization is as well.
Sure, yeah.
You know, if you're the CEO of Ford or General Motors, you know, do you date somebody who bought a Cadillac? Well, why not? You know.
Yeah.
But I get your point. I take your point. So let me get back to your book for a second. So the book is out now. It's available. Yeah?
The book is available at thefreddycruz.com, and that's Freddy with a Y, C-R-U-Z. It's also on Amazon.
This wasn't inspired by true life events, was it?
It was inspired by through life events. One of my friends, he's a very close friend of mine, name is Tyler. He's our night guy. So this goes back to pre-COVID times at a music festival where he was backstage with a band that shall remain nameless. He was backstage with a band. They were hanging out. All was well. There was a photographer with whatever publication that shall remain nameless. He was back there with her, with the band and her co-workers. My friend Tyler, thought they were hitting it off and that maybe there was a chance of a dinner or something. But lo and behold, she ditches him backstage in front of our colleagues and her colleagues for the lead singer of the band that shall remain nameless, and to put the nail in the coffin, to kick a man while he's down. Last I heard, they're married and living in Europe. So I took that actual event and was like, well, what could be an even worse case scenario? I know. And now they canceled the DJ.
Oh, well, poor Tyler. Has he recovered from his broken heart?
Oh, he is absolutely recovered.
Okay,
we
good.
laugh about that to this day. He actually went on a date this past weekend. His first play was a first date. They saw The Little Mermaid. So
Beautiful. All right, Freddie. Well, we got to wrap this up. Give out your website again, please.
sure, thefreddycruz.com.
Okay, and there's links to the book and social media, all that.
Absolutely. I'm on Instagram, Twitter. You can tweet at me, troll me. I don't care. I love it.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.